Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. I thought I'd start off showing you the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation through early in the morning here on Tuesday, July the 6th, because we had an interesting event happen over the weekend, and that was a rather large high-pressure cell kind of built right here over parts of the Midwest. And what we end up getting out of this is what we call a ring of fire precipitation setup. So you can see how the storms kind of ran all around the periphery of that ring. Now, what's important about this is that while that gave much of the state of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia a dry 4th of July weekend, what we did end up getting out of this was storms that did move through parts, as you see over here, into the very dry fields in North and South Dakota. And I was going to talk to you corn and soybean farmers for just a moment. We're going to watch wetter weather move out of the Dakotas across Minnesota over into Wisconsin today, and then there's going to be a second round of storms that comes right through the heart of the Corn Belt here, so we're going to keep a very close eye on that. But probably the thing that we need to be talking most about here at the beginning is what's going on with Tropical Storm Elsa. So let's take a look at some of the latest radar imagery. So you'll notice that we kind of get these hard edges. That would be the extent of the radar view. But what I'm going to do is take you back from yesterday and play this forward. We can see some of the outer rain bands coming off of Cuba last night on Monday, then getting into the early morning hours today, you're going to see it move over the Keys. And there was some pretty well-defined convection going on here early this morning as this went over the Keys, indicating some early morning strengthening. So we're going to watch this very carefully as it moves toward the Gulf Coast of Florida. Now, it is actually quite rare to have systems, tropical systems, come into the west coast of Florida. In fact, it's been a very, very long time since we've had a powerful tropical cyclone do that. And thankfully, though, it appears that Tropical Storm Elsa will remain a tropical storm. At least that's what the latest guidance is from the National Hurricane Center. They, at this point, are anticipating the maximum sustained winds, not gusts, but maximum sustained winds staying below hurricane strength. It wouldn't surprise me if it did briefly strengthen to hurricane, Category 1 strength before making landfall here. But we do have tropical storm warnings all along the coast of Florida. Now, if we kind of just zoom in here and just take a look at where this is expected to go, the National Hurricane Center and kind of their envelope of possible locations here. And again, that envelope, the width of it is determined by the historical track error, not by the ensemble members. It's historical track error. Suggests that this will become a tropical depression moving through South Carolina and through this part of North Carolina by Thursday, mid-afternoon. Big question is, how much total accumulated precipitation should we expect out of this, and what will those winds be? Now, in general, most forecast guidance keeps the winds well below 50 miles an hour. We could get a few gusts to that point across North and South Carolina, but I'm not anticipating strong winds. I'm going to show you a few different ways by which we're going to look at this precipitation. And we're going to start here from our first map here from the WPC. So this is the Weather Prediction Center. This is a part of NOAA and the National Weather Service. So they use a blended technique of both weather models and human forecasters to produce this graphic. What we notice here is that there's going to be a swath through southern Georgia, right in through this part of South Carolina, and then the eastern part of North Carolina, suggesting 2 to 3 plus inches of rainfall. Could locally be more. But you notice that going over to the western edge of this, there's going to be a pretty sharp drop-off in total precipitation amounts, and it seems to be centered right on Raleigh. But the forecast models, the GFS and the European model, are separate on what they're forecasting at this point. I want you to use this map as your best guidance at this point as to how much rainfall to expect as we watch the system progress through the middle and end of the week. But I want you to see the differences. Now, a note, the GFS model has had the best handle on Elsa, and that's quite rare. Usually the European model is a better tropical forecaster, but the difference is probably best seen here. Now, what I did was I took the 0Z runs from today, and I'm going to compare the GFS to the European model. Anywhere that you see these colors down here, the kind of the yellows to the reds, that would be where the GFS is wetter. Excuse me. And then the greens to the blues or teal, that would be where the European model is wetter. And what you notice is the European tracks Elsa's heaviest rainfall here, whereas the GFS is there. And you notice how the National Hurricane Center is favoring the GFS solution to this. and I agree with them on that. I think the wetter weather will be farther to the east, and rainfall ranges 2 to 3 plus inches in total out of that. But you notice there's some heavy rain coming through the Corn Belt here, and the models are in different positions on it, but they're certainly showing up wetter. So I think we better just dive right into the models and take a look at what they've got for us. We're going to do this side by side. Let's blow this up so we can, there we go, that's about max screen there. So on the left, I have the GFS, and on the right, I have the European. Let's watch all of this come together to see what's going to be bringing precipitation our way through the next 7 days here. So let's just play this through until we get to this evening, all right? Now what you're going to notice is that the European model is slower in the north progression of ELSA compared to the GFS. Much of the day today is rain-free for us, just possibly some scattered showers. Now as we go into the overnight hours and then into Wednesday morning, afternoon, and evening, notice what I was saying here. We've already got this in the GFS north of Savannah, and if you come down here to the European model, we're still on the kind of Florida-Georgia line here. And then as you move this forward, you're going to watch that by the time we get out to 7 a.m. on Thursday, the GFS already has the system on the North and South Carolina border, whereas the European's still slower. And the slower progression is going to take the heaviest rain, like I said, in the European over Raleigh, whereas if you watch the GFS, it stays much farther to the east. So here we go. This is Thursday afternoon. So look, the GFS much wetter farther to the east. And then into Thursday evening, this is where, oops, there we go. This is where, let me step you back one. There we go. That is where the European takes the heaviest rain. Now at this time in the GFS, we've already moved this off of parts of Virginia. So the GFS is much faster in the progression moving this forward. So by the time we get to Friday morning, the system should have cleared the states, and we'll be out there, just off of the coast of like Rhode Island. Okay, what comes after that? Well, as we get into Friday and now into Saturday morning, afternoon, and evening, we do have chances for scattered showers throughout the weekend. But the frontal boundary that stalls out right here across the heart of the Corn Belt, all right, is in both models. Question is, does that frontal boundary move toward us? So let's go out here toward Sunday morning, afternoon, and evening. And if you notice there, we're expecting the storms to pop in the late afternoon. It's in both models. So we could go into a stormy weekend pattern here, especially on Sunday. But then early into next week, there's Monday. Again, low pressure starts to form here over Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa. They're drawing in a lot of moisture from the Gulf, so it could be a stormy start to early next week. And that could continue, like you see here, into Tuesday afternoon and evening as well. Now, we went out there pretty far in the forecast so far, just taking a look at what these next, 7 or 8 days are showing us. Let's start to stitch this together and understand what the total outlook is going to be. All right. When we go out there to about day 10, because we saw how ELSA plus this weekend and early next week storms are going to shape up, how do we kind of move forward from that point? Well, the jet stream pattern by the time we get to day 10 is doing something a bit like this. And when you look at that pattern, we do see a ridge kind of anchored over the Four Corner States and flow that's coming out like that. Now, what we'll be curious to see with this pattern is whether or not we will break away from what we've seen, through much of June and early July. While this is the flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere, what is the flow at the surface going to do? Because we've been dominated from early June all the way through early July by a large area of high pressure sitting here. This map shows you from June 1st through July the 3rd, where we had anomalously high atmospheric pressure over Bermuda. Remember how much I talked about that? That is what pushed that moisture, and will continue to do that here in the near term, into the Carolinas. The net effect of that high pressure system was to do this to our precipitation pattern. So from June 1st through July the 3rd, we were extremely wet. On the whole, I'm going to wait for the stats to officially come out here, but this is looking like possibly maybe a top 20 for the entire state, wettest Junes on record. But as you get over there toward the East Coast, you can see that, we're talking about a top 10. That is what that those high pressure anomalies gave us. Now, when we look out here with the models, though, this is now the week 2 forecast, which takes us all the way out to July the 20th. And we've now started to see where the models are favoring drier conditions in through here. See that? With wetter conditions running almost the whole of the periphery of that area. Now that tells me I need to be watching what's going to happen with that high pressure cell. And at this point, the models are not giving me strong indications on how it is going to change. Yet they are showing this drier pattern along the Gulf Coast, clear here to the coastal Carolinas. And it's not just the European model. It's also the GFS. Let's shrink that up so it fits. There we go. You see that right in through this area, we're seeing drier conditions with much wetter conditions farther to the north in both models. So that's the first thing I want to be watching out for as we go here into the middle of the month of July. Now, before we go any farther than that, I want to talk to you about temperatures, because this map shows you June 1st through July the 6th, June 1st through June 30th. So this is the whole of the month of June, what the temperature ranks have looked like. And you can tell we've resisted having sustained heat. It's all been in the Northeast, or it's been in the Northern Plains, and it has been truly hot, record-setting hot in the West. And we've heard a lot about that, of course, in the news. The question is this pattern going to persist? And my answer for you is yes. The Four Corners Ridge seems to be the most dominant factor we have playing right now. And what you're going to notice here is how this temperature pattern evolves from Tuesday into Wednesday and Thursday. So you see the cooler air coming in. It's going to take us out of the upper 80s, low 90s, down into the low 80s by Thursday. But remember, that's the day we're going to watch the tropical system come through, Elsa. But as we play this on through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you just notice we are not breaking away and going over toward hot conditions. It's all staying in the western United States. So as we go from there into Monday, you just see the extreme heat that's in the west while we stay very close to our climatological averages. Now, playing this out a little further, this is now looking at the day 5 through 10 time period. And while we do see the extreme heat in the west, in the Canadian prairie, our temperatures maybe just 2, 3, 4 degrees warmer than normal here in North Carolina and Virginia. But that's just not a major deviation from normal. Now, what I want to do to finish this up is I want to talk about what the longer term trends are and show you what I mean by that persistence forecast, because this was just released last night. What you've got here are is the 30-day outlook in terms of temperatures from July 16th through August 15th. And if you notice, that temperature pattern you're looking at here is almost identical to what we just saw that we had back in June. And most of the heat is in the west. So the question is, what is the precipitation pattern going to do? And let's flip over and take a closer look at that. You see, as we look at that 30-day anomaly, there it is. You notice how the models are now trying to buy into some drier weather here and also into Florida, and have the wettest corridor right into this area. It's a weaker southwest monsoon. It's drier in pockets of northern plains getting into the Canadian prairie. But I look at this and I say, are we really breaking down that high pressure cell such that we're no longer going to push in the moisture and not have those thunderstorms? And I don't think it's going to do that. I think we're going to continue to see better thunderstorms around that Bermuda high. But this is the outlook now through the middle of August. You saw the temperature pattern is not favoring extreme heat at this point, and the precipitation is just a shade on the drier side of things. But notice too, for you corn and soybean farmers, how wet much of the Corn Belt is. From there, what we need to be watching most carefully now that we are, fully into hurricane season are maps like these. Often an indicator that we're going to start to see more activity in the Gulf, in the open Atlantic, or coming off of Africa, is by looking at something called velocity potential. Now, I show you these maps, but it's related to the MJO. Now, what you're going to see in this is that over the next 5 days, there it is, much of the upward motion in the atmosphere, which is shown in these kind of blue-green colors, is going to be centered over the Indian Ocean, where the Indian monsoon is really getting going. What we want to watch out for, because even though there are no tropical systems coming in the next 5 days, what we want to watch out for is any time in this part, we call it the main development region, or off of Africa, that we start to see better rising motion. And if I just slip out here about 20 days from now, Okay, so this would be getting about the 25th of July. I just want to tell you all, let's keep an eye on this, because that would signal a better scenario for what we call African easterly waves in the flow of the atmosphere. They kind of do something like that. Low pressure center shows up right there, okay? That could spawn a tropical system. So I just want to let you know I'm watching the end of July for another round of potential activity. From there, though, let's broaden this out and finish up by giving you a long-range outlook. This just was released on the 5th. And what you've got here is the August, September, and October temperature pattern. Now, we notice that the greatest heat is expected to be concentrated in the northern plains into the Canadian prairie. And our temperatures are set to be pretty darn close to average, maybe a slight warm bias. On the precipitation side of that thing, let's take a look here at what we're expecting. You notice that the model is driest compared to normal in the plains, wetter along the Gulf Coast, and possibly wetter along the East Coast, but you don't notice any really strong patterns that we can just latch onto and say, this is the way things I think are going to shape up. That's largely due to the fact that right now, the long-range signals like the movement of the MJO or atmospheric momentum, well, the MJO is going into null space and atmospheric momentum is low, but not necessarily in the northern hemisphere. So I'm going to ask you to take this with a grain of salt and tell you that I think we need to watch the hurricane season very closely. Where I want to finish with this is I'm going to broaden this out to an equatorial view, and I'm going to flip this over into ocean temperatures. And as we play this forward, you do notice that the Atlantic stays warm through our hurricane season. That's a fuel source for hurricanes. But going into fall and winter, do you start to notice how cooler water has resurfaced here? That would be an indication that we need to be paying attention to the potential for a second kind of dip into La Nina. And we're going to be talking about that a lot this summer and this fall as to what that means. But the latest European model forecast guidance has now given the plume of ocean temperatures in the middle of the Pacific better chances of coming back down below normal, hence La Nina, than going way up here toward El Nino conditions. And I want to be watching that carefully. Okay, hope you all had a great 4th of July weekend. I look forward to talking again next week on Monday. Thank you.